Hi, I'm Rainer. Welcome to my train room. And today I've got another locomotive on the bench. This is one that I also bought at that same estate sale as that previous GP38 that I was talking about, that Proto 2000 that was new in the box, but seized up, and then I got it going. And anyway, this one is definitely not a new locomotive. It's an older Atlas. I think it's one of the Atlas yellow box locomotives, and it runs okay. A little bit noisy motor, but seems to run just fine. I've lubricated the gears in it, but it certainly wasn't seized up or anything. It looks like it was a custom hand-painted locomotive by the previous owner. Not a perfect paint job, but you know what? I think I'm just going to leave it the way it is with the paint, the Ontario Northland paint. He did a half-decent job, and you know what? I think I'm going to leave it just like that. But what I do want to do is I want to change the lighting in it, because right now it just has the one little light bulb that, well, the other thing about this Loco is he's customized it. He's put the bell on the front and things like that. So I just want to leave it the way it is, because I think he did a pretty good job on it. But the inside of the locomotive, the light bulb is just the single light bulb. It's kind of looks like there's a campfire going in the cab when you're driving around, because it's this yellow glow. And it really doesn't light up the headlights, but it lights up the cab, and that's not really what I'm looking for. So I want to put in some directional LED lights inside the shell. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to glue them so they light up through the front lights and the back and make them directional. And I'm also going to put a decoder in this thing to turn it to DCC. So we'll see how that goes. It doesn't look like it's going to be terribly difficult to do. It looks like there's plenty of room to do it. So what I will do is just tackle it here. So I'm going to record it with my overhead camera here. And then once I've got it all done, I'll get back to you and go over any issues or anything else that I saw while I was doing it. First thing I did was to create some new headlight lenses for the body shell, because they were just empty holes in the body shell. I'll talk more about how I did this. Then the next thing was to position the new LED bulbs in the body shell, and then I used some super glue to glue them in place. Just got to hold them in for a little while to make sure that the glue starts to grab so the bulbs stay in place. The next thing was to cut all the wires that come up from the trucks to the motor, as well as the wires that go from those terminals that go to the light bulb, and remove the light bulb. Then I started soldering in the actual decoder, just following the color code for the wires that come up from the trucks, as well as the wires that go to feed the motor. And then I soldered the wires onto the LED lights in the body shell. And then I put the whole thing back together and did a few test loops around the layout, made sure the front lights and rear lights were working and everything was working properly, and everything seemed to be good. So as you can see, I got it all wired up. I got it working. Headlight works. The rear light works. Everything's working just fine. But I popped the cover off again because I thought that this would be a good locomotive to show you some basic electrical things about converting a DC locomotive to DCC, because this is a very simple old school locomotive. Didn't come with any circuit boards in it, just running straight DC with a single light bulb in it, as I mentioned. It's the one that I kind of like to call the campfire in the cab kind of light bulb. It's a little incandescent bulb that kind of glows and flickers in the cab, and the faster you go, the brighter it gets. The cleaner your tracks are, the less it flickers, but basically it just provides a general glow inside the cab. And when I popped the cover off, there were little plastic clear rods that were supposed to conduct the light from the bulb to the lights at the end of the headlights and taillights of the of the locomotive. It doesn't really work, but that's the idea. Anyway, that's all been removed, and I've wired bulbs in here. I put in LED bulbs, and anyway, I just thought I would go through this a little bit and go over how these DC locomotives work. I have this locomotive sitting on the workbench here with the front facing away from me, so the right is on my right, the left is on my left. And the way this locomotive was originally wired for DC was pretty simple. It had this wire and this wire from the front truck, and this wire and this wire from the rear truck feeding power directly to the motor. And there were also wires from these two terminals that went to the little light bulb that was right here. So on a DC locomotive, when it is going forward, it needs to have the positive power coming on this side, on the right-hand side, and the negative on the left side. So when the train was going forward on a DC track, they would be picking up the positive power on this right side of this truck and the right side of this rear truck, and this gray wire here and this right side red wire here, and it would feed it to this terminal, which feeds directly to the motor, to one side of the motor. And then the negative would be coming from this wire, and that was connected to this electrical terminal, which fed the other side of the motor. So it was very simple. When you turn the train on your power pack to go forward, it would get positive here, negative here. The more voltage you fed it, the faster the train goes in that direction. When you change the direction, you're reversing the polarity of the track. So now the positive is on this side, negative is here, positive this side, negative here. And so that feeds the positive to here and the negative to here. And now the motor spins the other direction and the train goes backwards. It's pretty simple. The light bulb that was sitting here just had two wires. One went to here, one went to here. When the train was going, the faster it went, the brighter the bulb got. And that's about it. There was really no circuit board. There's nothing else in here. So all I did was I just cut these wires that came from here off of these two terminals. And same with the wires that come from the rear truck, and then reconnected everything to the decoder. Now, when you're converting a locomotive to run on DCC, essentially what you're doing is inserting a decoder between the power that's coming from the trucks and the motor itself. And then the decoder will basically receive the power and the signal from the tracks and translate it to what you want the locomotive to do, and then send the power to the motor. This is just an inexpensive lace DCC decoder that I bought online. And the standard wiring color for these is basically the red and the black are the power feed from the trucks, from the rails, and then the orange and the gray are the power feed to the motor. And so remember how I just said I cut the red wire and these gray wires, the gray black wires back here, and the red wire. So what I did was I just took and connected this wire and this wire, so the ones from the right side of the truck, to the red wire on the decoder. Soldered them together, put heat shrink on it. The left side truck wire, so this wire and this wire over here, connect to the black. So this is positive, this is negative, or the right side or left side, if you want to call it that. That's how it needs to be connected. So that's all I did here. I put, this goes to the right side of the trucks on the locomotive. This goes to the left side. So this wire connect to the red, left wire, this one here, this one connect to the black. Then this orange and gray, the orange connects to, as you can see a little bit of orange wire there, the orange wire connects to the right side terminal of the motor, what was formerly connected to the right side of the trucks. The gray wire connects to the left side of the motor, what was formerly connected to the left side of the trucks. And so now electrically, I basically put this onto the trucks and then connected these orange and gray onto the motor. That's it. That's all it would need for the thing to move. So the next thing I did was, if you saw in here, if you can see in here, I put in an LED at the front and an LED at the back, kind of glued them in place, put little pieces of plastic in there and super glued it all in place so that they are behind the lenses of the locomotive. Now, electrically, these LEDs that I bought have a resistor already in them. And LEDs, unlike old school light bulbs, are sensitive to polarity. They only work one way. So the black on these lights, the black needs to go to the negative, the red goes to the positive. On these decoders, the 3 wires that are feeding the lights are the blue, the white, and the yellow. And the way it works is the blue is a common positive. So you connect the blue, as you can see right here, to both of the red wires. So the blue is the positive for the front light and the rear light. Then the white is the negative for the front light. So you can't kind of see it very well because I've taped it all together, but essentially what I did was I took the white wire connected to the black from the front LED, and that's all taped up in here. I put heat shrink on it. The yellow connects to the negative from the rear LED. And so what happens is when you, through your controller, turn on the front light, it is now feeding power through the white and the blue for the front LED. And when you switch to the rear light, change direction, it now feeds power through the yellow and the blue, which will turn on the rear light. That's about it. Now the purple and the green in this, the green and the purple on this decoder, I just cut them short and insulated them with heat shrink because I'm not using them for anything. They are for additional functions, which this locomotive doesn't have any. I mean, it has a motor and it has 2 lights. There's nothing else in it. So that's all I used. And that's it basically for the electrical. So again, just very quickly, right side wires coming up from the right side of the trucks connect to the red wire. Left side of the trucks connect to the black wire. Right side of the motor gets the orange wire. Left side of the motor gets the gray wire. That means when you hit forward, the locomotive will go forward. If I reverse this orange and gray wire, the locomotive would still work. It would just go reverse when you put it in forward and forward when you put it in reverse. That's the worst that will happen at that point. Now, this locomotive was also, because it had been custom modified by a previous owner, they've put this extra longer hood on it. They've moved the bell up here. They've done a number of things on this to make it more prototypically accurate for Ontario Northland. And but at the same time, they didn't kind of finish it, or they did some things that I guess weren't a priority to them. So these lights on the back and on the front, even though the holes were there were no lenses in them. They were just holes in the shell. And I didn't have any lenses to fit in them. And I found that if I'm going to be putting a light on the inside, it always works better if there is some type of a lens there. So what I did was I just got a chunk of, this is square, but I just got a chunk of clear round sprue left over from another project that I had done. I just put it on my cordless drill, and then I just used a file and some sandpaper to gradually wear it down so it was the right thickness to put into the hole. So I just kept test fitting it until it fit in the hole. Once it was at the right diameter and that it actually fit in, so I just pushed it in because it ended up being kind of tapered, pushed it in until it got stuck in there, and then just cut it off with my cutters. Did the same thing with some more of that clear sprue, put it in the other hole because there's 2 holes at each end, cut it off, did the same at the other end of the locomotive. So that was just my way of creating lenses from leftover pieces of plastic, what would be junk otherwise. So anyway, I have lenses in it, and I'm happy with it. I've just got to put the shell back on, and but I've had it running continuously around my layout up at the top after I did this work on it, and it runs great. Did some lubrication on it before I put it back together, and that's just the basic electrical part of putting in a decoder in an old school basic DC locomotive. It isn't complicated. There's nothing complex about it. It's just follow the color codes. Just make sure you know which one's the right side and the left side, and just keep that straight, connect the wires correctly, and it should work just fine. Anyway, thank you for watching, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and see you next time.